But how does this complex and awe-inspiring device actually work? And how did Al Jazari improve so fundamentally on the timing devices of his ancient forefathers? Amazingly, the elephant clock consists of several mechanisms that match those used in modern engineering. Inside the belly of the elephant is a submersible float with a small hole which is carefully calibrated to produce a specific flow of water which determines the rate at which the float sinks, and therefore the time at which the clock strikes. The sinking activates a tripping mechanism, which sets a series of events in motion that mark the passage of time and strike the hour. At this point, the float is tilted out of the water, emptying its contents. It will then rest on the water's surface, and the cycle is repeated. The clock employs automata, such as the striking of a cymbal and the chirping of a bird to mark the passage of the hours.
For its time, it is a very complicated clock in the sense that it has automatic feedback, and this continues almost like a perpetual motion machine.
The elephant clock is one of the finest examples of technology from the golden age of Eastern civilization.
So it's a unique combination of art and architecture and also engineering.
But the inventors of the East also turned their attention to the development of machines of war. In order for this great civilization to spread so rapidly, its engineers must have developed a formidable array of weapons. The Eastern world was responsible for bringing the technology of the trebuchet to Europe from China, the most feared war machine of the ancient world.
The military equipment that you would have found being used in the 12th and 13th century in the Islamic world would have been of considerable superiority over what would have been used in Europe at the same time. The counterweight trebuchet could hurl a much larger weight of almost 400 pounds, and it could hurl it to a distance of about 300 yards. Not simply stones or large, heavy pieces, but also incendiary devices.
But it was not only catapult technology that spread from China, for the war engineers of the East were responsible for far more advanced discoveries, including fireproof uniforms and explosive weapons. One weapon in particular would change the face of war forever: the torpedo. The engineers and scientists of the East had made huge pathways in developing intricate technology that built on and furthered the innovations of ancient civilizations. But the great minds of the East are also responsible for the development of ingenious and terrifying weapons of war. And used in these weapons was a sophisticated form of refined gunpowder. This was manufactured to a formula that used natural ingredients which were in plentiful supply. These included willow charcoal and saltpeter.
By combining them, you turn relatively innocuous components into the driving force of warfare for nearly 1,000 years.
Gunpowder was invented in China, but in its early stages of development was not explosive enough to be deadly on the battlefield. But now, new evidence suggests that scientists of the East devised a formula that could actually be harnessed for the theater of war.
It's not until the 12th century, 13th century, when we start to get the mixtures refined to such a way as you can effectively drive rockets, torpedoes, cannons, handguns, and everything we're familiar with ever since. But it was Hassan al-Rama who was the man who really put it down in writing and made it clear.
Working in the 13th century, Hassan al-Rama wrote an infamous book on military technology, detailing explosive recipes for gunpowder. So advanced was his thinking, we may have to re-examine the history of warfare. For within the pages of his book, Hassan al-Rama documents what is believed by some scholars to be the first rocket in history developed specifically for warfare.
He lists 22 different recipes for the powder for rockets and different forms of rocket. He's really the father of rocketry.
During the same period of innovation, Eastern war engineers also developed another weapon that harnessed the explosive capabilities of gunpowder: the cannon.
In Spain and North Africa, at the end of the 14th century, there were people who were using the purified and crystallized form of saltpeter in a container, if you will, which was then lit as an explosive to project a small ball. And we have evidence for this from as early as 1377.
There are intriguing images which still survive of Eastern forces carrying such cannons. In one early text from the St. Petersburg collection known as the Book of Sciences, a description is provided of a soldier who carries a midfa, or cannon. The weapon looks like a modern handheld rocket launcher.
Now in